Thank you. Yeah, like, so you know how I'm saying, like, investing in myself. The reality is it's less easy.
Mm,
Like, so basically, when I moved to Edinburgh, I got a job I didn't like, and then my mum wanted to buy a house. We
mm,
moved here,
mm,
and in that I found this course, and I was like, okay, it was NLP coaching, right? I didn't know what it was. I
mm,
signed up for the first free 2 days, and then I got into it, set up like the payment plan. And the reality is, me investing in myself was me not telling my mom how much it cost to
mm,
pay for it,
mm,
because it was like, oh my god, I have to pay the mortgage. We're gonna get a house.
mm.
Like, it's less easy. But
Yeah.
now, over time, over the past 2 years, it's transitioned to the point where I've sat down and hadn't, because I've given myself that time and space.
Mm,
Like, I'm like, okay, I've had an honest conversation to say, look, this is how much I've invested. This is what I'm passionate about. And now my mom supports me in what I'm doing.
mm,
So in the start it was less easy. Like, I
mm,
literally remember, like, we like graduated from doing my master practitioner training, and we were sitting having like dinner with all the other delegates, and I was saying, like, they were all laughing because they were like, oh, Mubashir's mom doesn't know how much he's paying for this course. Like,
mm.
but
Yeah.
now we've done like a full circle because I've invested in myself, and now
Mm,
I've got paying clients. I help other people. Like, now mom's like, look, I fully support you. They give me time. They're like, oh, you have a call, you've got a client call. We'll keep it quiet,
mm,
like, and they fully support me. So it's like it starts by doing the less easy things for
mm,
yourself.
mm,
And that's what I tell my clients as well. I'm like, when you start giving yourself that time and
mm,
doing the things that are right for you, other people will automatically support you and change. Because ultimately, that's what happens, right? Most of the time, when we take that step forward, like, we think it's going to be daunting. It's like going into the unknown.
mm,
But when if we believe in it and we see it as a new challenge that we can conquer,
mm,
then other people are gonna support us. But
mm,
it's our own limiting beliefs that kind of stop us in the
mm,
way.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Robert. I'm continuing to remain stable. I have been on a clinical trial drug now for
mm,
the tumors that I have in my lungs for a little over 3 years now. The trial ended about a year and a half ago. My doctor was fortunate enough to get me to be. I'm a single person trial. I'm one person continuing to
mm,
do this, and I feel great from my perspective.
mm,
Unfortunately, everybody who was on the trial with me when it started 3 years ago has passed away. And
mm,
I am still here. I know I'm here for a reason. I remember when I found out I had these tumors in my lungs, it was the same time I ended up having to have my leg amputated because
mm,
of my cancer. And about 6 months after all this occurred, my oncologist was showing me my CAT scan.
mm,
And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read
mm,
a CAT scan, but you can
mm,
kind of look at it and be like, well, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I have
mm,
these big tumors in my lungs. I have fluid all around the pleural spaces in my lungs. And I remember looking at my oncologist and saying, how was I alive? And Robert, I'll never forget this. He put his head down, shook his head no, and then he lifted his head up and he looked at me and he said, I don't know because you shouldn't have been. Which
mm,
said to me that God's not done with me yet. When I
mm,
die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. I spend
mm,
more time focusing on, as we're talking about, the connection that I can make with other people so that my life can be enriched and I can enrich their life with the discussion, with the connection that we have. So I am still stable. I'm continuing to be treated every 3 weeks at the
mm.
hospital for an entire week. And I will do that either until the drug stops working or my doctor says we've got another type of therapy. So I'll
Mm.
continue to do this. It's not a fun thing, but it allows me the opportunity to come on here and talk with you every year. And I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, I'll tell you one more story. Again, another nursing story. So I had a nurse recently who was taking care of me, asked me what it was like to have my foot amputated in 2018 and then my leg amputated in 2020. And I told her, I said, it certainly hasn't been easy. I'm 6'8" tall. So learning to walk again, falling is not an option. You kind
Mhm,
of get hurt from this height.
mhm,
So I have to be a little more careful. But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And Robert, we spend a tremendous amount of time, focusing on working on this body. We work out, we eat right, we get enough we get enough sleep, we reduce stress. And I'm certainly not telling you not to do that. You absolutely should continue to do that. But what I am suggesting is this: maybe spend a little more time every day working on who you really are, your heart, your mind, and your soul. We know this body's going to die at some point. It's going to decay and it's going to go away. But your heart, your mind, and your soul, I believe those things are eternal. Those things live on. And I just don't think we spend nearly as much time working on them as we should.
Thank you. So yeah, that childlike curiosity, wonderment, I can definitely relate to that, and I think we all can relate to that. And if we need a reminder, we can look at our younger self, maybe pick up some toys from when we were a younger kid, maybe some hobbies, like go down memory lane and just see how we got wrapped up. I was chatting to my partner the other day, and just she was saying how glow in the dark toys used to be like the most incredible things, or like those Heelys, those shoes that would wheel. I said, like, all packs of cards or little toys and chocolates, used to be the most incredible things. And today the kids are interested in different things, but it's amazing how captivated we can be. So a little bit about my story. I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then when I was 2.5, I came to Australia, and I had someone who really guided me in my life. I was very lucky. It was my step grandparents. So my stepfather and my mother brought me to Australia, and I assimilated into an Australian family. And my grandmother, the first moment she saw me, she looked at this 2.5-year-old kid walking up the stairs, and she had this moment where she said she felt this message from God shoot through her body, and said that she was going to be important in my life. And then 14 years later, I found myself out on the streets, nowhere to go, in the middle of the night. And, I skipped a couple of trains, and then went down to my grandparents' place, knocked on their window in the middle of the night, and they opened up the doors, and they opened up their hearts, and they welcomed me into their life. And they really guided me and helped me to work through a lot of trauma. They really, like you said, they held that space. There was they didn't feel the need to trauma bond or tell me their stories, but they just kind of, I would go into their room, and they would, I would talk to them and tell them the challenges I had and the issues I was working through. And they guided me through most of my life, and really became my own parents. So I think, sharing that story, it's a message that, to keep looking, to keep knocking, to keep out there, because there are good people that I believe you're meant to connect with, grow with, and meant to help you along your path. And both my grandmother passed away last year, my grandfather passed away in 2019, and they're both gone, and they're like parents to me, but I still carry them with me. And my grandfather had a great quote. He said, "Look, you don't lose your parents, Carl. They stay with you. They're in your mannerisms. They're in the way you think. They're in your thoughts. And so, but people will be there for you for a certain part of your journey. Keep looking and keep knocking, because it's out there."
Cool. Yeah. I 6.5 years ago, I was homeless, 148 pounds, and addicted to IV drugs. I was actually kicked out of the homeless shelter, so I was super homeless. And and right now I'm like 220 pounds, so I was super underweight. I was close to death. A lot of people, actually millions of people have seen a video of my overdose where the police found me, not breathing, no pulse, behind the wheel of a car. And, the transformation that happened from then till now is a miracle. It's not a special miracle that is special to me. I believe that each of us has the opportunity to live a miracle like this, but I see them every day. And that's what the real miracle is that I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I am in a position to witness miracles and other people's lives change.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really blessed for that, because I found recovery on November 6, 2017. 5 days later, I met Jesus face to face at IHOP, International House of Pancakes, while I was eating French toast. And on day 30, it was my first time ever having 30 days. So I quit smoking cigarettes, and haven't had a drag with cigarettes since then. And then on my 2 years clean and sober, I published my book, From Chains to Saved. It went pretty viral and became a bestseller. And then people started messaging me and, had found recovery through it. So I started coaching and training other people to write books. Now we've, published dozens of books about recovery stories, helping addicts. We have a 50-state resource guide specifically for underprivileged addicts and alcoholics that don't have insurance or finances for treatment. We'll help you get Medicaid. We'll help you get connected with all the resources in your area, nonprofits, that kind of stuff, because there's no shortage of resources anymore. If you're struggling with addiction, we have resources for you. I was able to give my TED Talk that came out 2 months ago, and it's starting to pick up a lot of views, pick up a lot of steam. I'm starting to get messages and things. And the thing is the whole idea is that every single person that overcomes something has a story. And with that story comes a power and a responsibility. If you have overcome mental health or addiction or, something in your life that you had to struggle through and you made it to the other side, there is somebody out there right now that will struggle to overcome the same battle until they meet you or hear your story. And, that's what I believe. My shirt says my story ain't over, because all of these things, it's like, as long as I stay connected with God and do what he says on a daily basis, I'm going to have the opportunity to be in a position to watch miracles the rest of my life in other people's lives. And I feel incredibly blessed for that. recoveredonpurpose.org. We have a bunch of resources there. I post blogs and vlogs and articles on my YouTube, and then Facebook, Recovered on Purpose, as well, if you want like memes and reels and positive stuff to enjoy the day. So that's about it.
Yeah. So those who are listening, those plugs will be right underneath. Just look at the notes and you'll be able to go and find out more on all the great work you're doing, Adam. Just want to say that I do commend you.
I grew up with, I didn't know this until I was in the mid-30s, that I was basically experienced a high-functioning anxiety through all my life. I didn't know. I thought that's just me. It's my character. This is the way I am. I didn't know that. So living in a very place where it's so, everything you do, you're not really trusting yourself. Like, did I lock the door? Go back. A lot of self-critics, and it's really affecting my body. Like, so I had autoimmune disease based on that, and that is basically a turning point when I realized, hey, what? Can I have more self-awareness? What is happening in me? Why does it happen like this? And then I start learning about how mind affecting the body, how body affecting the mind. And that's basically the journey, the healing journey I go through. I went through mindfulness. And about 3 years ago, I left my 20 years plus career to basically follow my heart. And what I felt is, I really want to put myself, what is behind fears? When you left a steady career, having paycheck, right, bi-weekly, and suddenly it's hard. There's so many, and I felt like it's just all of us have fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty, fear of making the wrong move, fear of like abandonment, whatever it is, right? Fear of getting sick. So what I did was like, what is this? What is behind all of this? So I started a journey of also writing a book, and the book is called The Heart Space: Living with Grace and Ease in an Era of Uncertainty. And what it is it's exploring the inner works of the mind, like uncovering what is the roots of fear, and introducing the way of being that thrive in time of change. Because in our society right now, everything comes instantly, right? Everything instant, and we get anxious a little bit. We go to social media and we scroll.
Yeah.
Right? We avoid our, this pain that we have, loneliness that we have, and we go through addictions, or use something else to live, to really take the pain away. And what I found is the cause of it is because we're using the head space so much more. We rely on our head space, which is our critical thinking, and those places in our head is really actually a survival mechanism that we have related to that. So if you don't feel safe when you're in survival, you need to really put yourself out, disconnect yourself. You separate yourself from the crowd because you want to protect yourself, because it's not safe. And what happened in that is we become hyper vigilant to think about what's wrong. What if it doesn't work? What if it is? What is that person gonna hurt me? What is because that experience before. But that's basically how make humans survive in 200 years, right? Like if we see a snake, poisonous snake, alive, and you mistakenly seeing it as a branch, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
See it a branch as a snake, you will you'll be okay. It's just a wrong interpretation, right?
Yes.
So our brain has been wired to always look for what missing and lack. And I found this is very related to mental health as well. But we have other capacity where I call it the heart space. And I introduce this to your audience today. And this is from my book, and I want to leave this to you. The heart space is a gentle holding space where all feelings, thoughts, and sensations are welcome. Space where we can have a loving relationship with our complexity and contradictions. No pushing, no pulling, just is. Through this deliberate, gentle holding, a different kind of intelligence and clarity emerge. Through the experience, then we finally understand from the core of our being, relationship with ourselves, others, and the planet, that we are enough, whole, never alone, and always interconnected. And I want to add something else too. That we are not broken. You are not broken. We are unintentionally create so many cuts in our thinkings that we end up working against ourselves. Like the thoughts that appear in your mind, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't control with what I think. Do not require fixing or control. They only require understanding. And would you cultivate a loving relationship with all your glorious complexities? There's nothing left to fix. Instead, you will return to harmony as a unified whole. And I wanna add something here. What if our well-being is innate? What is every human that's born here? What inside us have an innate well-being? And what if we get to know ourselves even more? Remember, what if every day we spend time to remember who we are, to remember our names beyond labels, beyond mental health or analysis, psychoanalysis label, but who we truly are as human beings. We all have time where I don't know, Robert, if you like the most beautiful, the most happiest, the most joyful time in our childhood. Before things happen, before difficulty. if we can go back to that, because it's already happening within us, and we can retrieve that back and feel the feelings, and we will I feel like we will have some that it's not all bad, it's not all gloomy, but once in a while, even like when we see the sky, we see the birds, there's this kind of joy without any reasons.
Yeah. What have you seen kind of help in regards to that?
Well, you're right. It is so individualized. It depends so much on where the patient is, where the individual who is suffering the trauma is. Are they effectively managing their trauma? Are they attempting to manage their trauma? Are they not acknowledging their trauma as well as their trauma response? So some people can experience lifetime trauma and become extremely withdrawn and hole up so as to again protect themselves from the dangers of the slings and arrows of society. Whereas others can suppress their emotions and just keep going with the day, pretending everything's okay when it's not. And then on the far outside, the other way, you can get act out behaviors where it might be verbal, it might be physically violent. And across that spectrum of behaviors, which I think you'd agree is a pretty wide spectrum, is going to impact on who is supporting the individual, how much are they supporting the individual, how old is the individual, and how dangerous does their support system feel that person is to them. So are we talking family? Are we talking significant other? Are we talking married significant other or just dating? There are so many factors to consider.
Yeah. And I guess it's also culture, like I'm half Puerto Rican, half South Korean, so like, and that's confused. But in essence, I guess the best example is, let's say, someone who doesn't want to say, "I'll never harm anyone." They go to the military, they harm someone, and then they have a traumatic experience through that. So there's also a degree of like moral injury in the idea that they now can't even see their self the same way, on top of the fact of the trauma that they're experienced, and that aspect. So I in a lesser form is like, what I find as a barrier is, and it sounds weird to say, but illiteracy, reading. Like literally, I could go with someone, and I find that they seem resistant, but it's because they can't read anything very well. And that in itself, if there's not good historian or anything like that, you kind of, you're hitting walls. But the reality is the person is trying to, even though they may have these, and they may share a little bit, and it's written down that there is, some trauma, they will not communicate, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm doing fine," and that's all they want.
Well, it's also how real is the threat in being honest. Yeah. As a mandated reporter, I know that if I'm doing an interview with an individual who is worried about, if I tell this person the whole truth, am I going to be hospitalized? Is Child Protective Services going to be knocking on my door tonight after dinner? Do I have to worry about being sent to the hospital or being sent to jail or some sort of other dangerous consequence? So, yeah, there is the factor of people don't speak out because they're afraid of being judged for their intellectual capacity. But there's also too many victims who have been told by the offender that they were actually the offender, and the victim doesn't know better, so they don't report because they're afraid of consequences.
Well, my name is Jimmy Spikes. I'm from Arkansas. I'm a Navy veteran. friend of Bill W. There's a lot of things that go along with certain things. I'm a member of a church here that's in Spanish, me español, no bueno. So it's a learning experience, but I enjoy that today. I can sit in the church and I can sit there and understand. I can understand Spanish pretty good, but in Puerto Rico, they speak very fast. So sometimes it's like, hey, can you tone it down just a little bit? But, they make fun of me. But it's doing things these days that allow me to do things the way that I do things that I enjoy the most. I have a second lease on life. I get to enjoy things from a different perspective. Whereas if I was stuck in Arkansas, I feel like I would have sold myself short because I know everything that goes on there. Fast forward, a couple of years past that, my mom passed away, and I was at a point in my life prior to her passing away. She was sick, and I was like, I've got to go. I'm tired of being here. I need to change. I told my family, when Mom gets well, I'm gonna go, and so I moved to Puerto Rico. I didn't know I was going to end up here. I just flew down here. A friend of mine suggested it. Fell in love. Bought a house. Rest is history. A couple years down the road, COVID hit. So I'm like everybody else in the world, and especially here, we were locked down. So I decided in my ultimate knowledge of everything that I was going to go to the beach, even though you couldn't. So I went down to the beach, and I was sitting there and just contemplating life, looking for an answer, not knowing where to go, and started looking for inspiration. My mom was a very big inspiration in my life. And so I was like, well, I'll look through my phone. I'll find a video of her or something. And that's when it hit me. I had one picture of my mom after 48 years or 45 years at that time. I'd lost all her digital assets, all her media, all her social media. Everything that she had saved on any storage platform was gone because we no longer had access to it. Or when you assign it to those mediums, you'd lose it for all. And that's where I came up with the company Paternal.
Also, more opportunity to share more if that's okay with you. You mentioned those steps. Is there anything else that you want to share that when it comes to what brought you to do what you're doing? You mentioned, I remember reading your profile, you do coaching, you've done a lot of different elements to help. My question simply is, why? Why do you do these things? Why do you have a passion for this? I know you mentioned your story briefly in those three momentous occasions, but what drives you today, and anything you want to share? We'll put your anything in the notes for those who are watching if they want to check out more about you. So the floor is yours.
Sure. So the motive for me to do whatever I'm doing is a formula that I have is joy plus impact equals. What do you think it equals?
Joy plus impact equals healing?
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. Okay.
Fulfillment. You are fulfilled when you are in the state of joy, and then you feel that you are doing that everybody else is getting benefit from whatever that you're doing. You're not just wasting your time or something like that. So fulfillment comes with joy and impact. And that is what I found, that those kind of avenues that I have at hand, the experiences that I have, the things that I can do for people can have a lasting effect on them. Then the fulfillment comes after. So that is my personal why, the motive that make me to go and do things that might be odd to a lot of people. They might say that, why? Because I'm coming from an engineering background. During those moments that I described in the stories, it shifted the direction of my life. I'm a different person now. Because I view life as my friend, not just a hostile universe. I see it a friendly universe, and we are all together to help each other, to enhance each other. We are not separate, we are just part of the whole. So that is how I see life, to give me the opportunity to just provide that kind of things for others, you know.
The person I think who wrote most eloquently on this, and very presciently in my view, was the great French sociologist Émile Durkheim, in his book on suicide that I've quoted in many podcasts. He's very clear in this book. He's very clear. He states it explicitly. He says that we're fantastically tribal as a species, and that our sense of well-being is interdependent. Of course, we now have the research of Dan Siegel, and we have Louis Cozolino, who've done all the research on interpersonal neurobiology, that there is a biology between us as well as within. But the person who really kicked it off was Durkheim. And Durkheim was explicit in saying that societies and communities are the lifeblood, the heartbeat of the individual's well-being. If you fragment that and if you destroy that, then what you are doing is you are initiating a process where people begin to destroy themselves. He gave a number of reasons for this, not all of which I agree, but I think the primary thrust of his argument, which is our societies, our community, that's the buy-in that we have. Part of our sense of identity comes from the community to whom we align. Of course, this can have problems. We can be very tribal, things can integrate into conflict, but that tribe is as much as part of how we derive a sense of who we are as anything else. And if you deprive someone of that, to a very large degree, there is no ability of the person to know who they are. And if there is no buy-in to it, then what they do is they destroy it, because why would you preserve something that had no value for you? So that would be the first. The second is I would point to the research of Professor Alan Shaw from UCLA, who asks a very important question, who are we? How do we define who we are? And in his wonderful book, Affect Regulation and the Origin of Self, he advances the idea that who we really are. Who am I when I'm speaking to Robert? Well, who I am is very largely what I have to do to self-regulate and to affectively regulate when I'm talking to you. Now, when I'm talking to my mother, that system is different. When I'm talking to my boss, that's different. When I'm talking to my colleagues, a junior, a senior, it's different. It's in that moment, what systems do I require? What metabolic expenditure is there? What allostatic load is there on me in self-regulating in the presence of another person? To some degree, that decides who I am, because who I am with Mum is very different to who I am with Robert. Right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine a situation where you don't have anyone. You don't have anyone. You don't have a mum. You don't have a Robert. You don't have a CEO. You don't have a boss. You don't have any of these things. Then how does that mechanism work? The answer is it can't. And so in Alan Shaw's paradigm, if you do not have another right brain against which to self-regulate, then it's not possible for the emergence of a sense of self. And that's the crisis of loneliness, I think. If you're isolated and you're lonely, then at an actual neurological level, the self itself is under threat, because you need another brain against which to regulate for yourself to emerge, so that when I'm with mum, I know who I am because I have to regulate in this way, I have to behave in this way, I have to be, and I'm with Robert. Okay, and all of this stuff is happening at a near unconscious level, but it is there. Shaw's research demonstrates this conclusively. Cosolino, to a degree, backs him up, as does Siegel. And it gives us now the neurological basis as to why we are so tribal as a species. And if I was asked why the loneliness epidemic is such a problem, it is because without people, our sense of self cannot emerge. All right, well, I'll give a sort of slight throat clearing. Robert and I, when we first came on, were talking about suicidality, and I share the introduction to my book on trauma. It was a bright, hot, humid morning in 2017 when my watch ticked 7:30, prompting me to get ready for the first client of the day. In my case, this meant inhaling another double-shot latte and shifting the mental gears into work mode. Suddenly, unexpectedly, my mobile phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize from a country I didn't recognize. A dilemma. I had only 30 precious minutes of rare quiet before the clients would begin to pour in, and I was in that peace until this interruption, which I ungenerously thought of as the height of bad manners. Should I take this call? I took the call. On the other end of the line was the faint voice of a woman I didn't know. The voice was shaky and soft. She introduced herself. I asked her basic questions, where she was from, how she got my number. Eventually, we reached the point where I was able to ask the key question. So, Ms. X, what can I do for you? The following was her answer. Dr. Joseph, I'm a physically healthy woman. My husband has a good job. We have more than enough money. I travel the world. I have 3 beautiful children whom I adore. A husband that gives me everything I need or want. I have a beautiful house in North America overlooking the most gorgeous lake. Right now, I am standing at the end of a pier that runs into the deepest part of the lake. I have concrete blocks tied to my ankles and bricks in each of my coat pockets. You asked what you could do for me. I'll tell you. I need you to give me a reason not to step off this pier.
Thank you. Well, 5 years ago, I would have never imagined I would have found something that would enable me to actually get better and actually become the person that I wanted to be. Because, as I mentioned, I'd grown up in an abusive home, domestic violence, alcoholism, which immediately you're just constantly in that fight flight part of your brain. And then when I was 11, I had brain surgery for a brain tumor, which left me visually impaired. And kind of going forward from that, then more family troubles. I lost my mum. I had an abusive relationship of my own. So by the time I reached my mid-30s, I just couldn't cope anymore. And, I always say to my clients that how much I empathize with them, because I've walked this walk because I had to save my own life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for solution-focused hypnotherapy. I wouldn't be here. And it's been amazing to do something that, as I was learning to do it, I was able to get well myself, and I just continue to get more and more and more well, because I learn more and more and more what works for me, what doesn't work for me. I can support my partner better. He's found out he has ADHD, and I can support him better. It's just been an amazing journey, Robert, that I feel incredibly lucky to have come across this form of therapy. I've spent so much money and so much time. I was at a point where I was just exercising like a maniac. You know, I had food allergies. I was so tired and exhausted all the time. I'd had shingles twice. I just was at the end. God knows where I'd be now. But in my journey of helping myself and training to do this form of therapy, you know, my friends were my guinea pigs, and I've helped them, and we've, you know, got closer and closer as friends. And then the clients that have come to see me, I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky. It's been amazing, because sometimes I have people come into my clinic room, and when I explain to them, after today, after this initial consultation, we're not going to be talking about the past. We're not going to be talking about the problem. We're going to be talking about the solution. Sometimes they cry with joy, because they say, I have spent so many years talking through my trauma that I am so relieved to have found you. And I explained to them, you know, if we keep talking about that trauma, it keeps going back in the stress bucket, and we keep having to reprocess those moments. And they're so relieved, and that's me in a nutshell, really. I used to be a personal trainer, and then I wanted a career change, and this kind of fell in my lap. So it was kind of meant to be.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. What brought me to where I'm at right now? I am just turned 54, and I really feel like my life kind of started over when I was in my earlier 50s, like around 50, 51, because I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had thyroid cancer, and went through having my thyroid removed, and went through having radioactive iodine therapy and all that stuff. And it really woke me up and made me realize that I'm not getting any younger. And there are things that I have wanted to do that I kept putting off. So I went back and got my MBA after I had set it aside 20 years ago. I went back and finished that this July. I had worked at the same job for 12 years and decided to up and go do a completely different kind of role, but still a social worker. I'm a social worker and always will be at heart. But I've really woke up over this last few years. I've started my own business and am trying to help other women who have mental health struggles or struggles with neurodivergence, that kind of thing. And I don't know, it's important to me that I give back to my community.
And you mentioned your focus is on women regarding particularly just mental health, or more beyond that? Do you feel that with women it's harder for them? I just want to ask if there's a reason for that focus that you're focusing on.
That's a great question, because I don't think it's harder for women. I think men have a hard time too, and men especially, I think, have a hard time talking about mental health issues because it's kind of taboo for them to even admit that. So no, I think the reason I focus on women is because I am one, and I understand where they're coming from, and I get what they're going through, since I have my own mental health issues. So it's just something I can relate to. So yeah.
And you know, building that rapport quickly is paramount when you're dealing with clients and you're working with clients, because you know, I could tell a person have great resources and be like, oh, this will be helpful. But if they don't trust you, if they don't know you, if they don't feel that you're going to fight for them or be there with them, it's all for naught. And it's raw. And as you know, in this field, it's about building relationships with these people and getting them where they need to go, wherever that is. So, yeah.
And I agree 100%, because if I don't trust you, I'm not going to believe a word you say. And especially if they've been through the system and have been turned down before, or promised things that didn't come through, that never proved to be true for them, then why would they trust you?
So the floor is yours to kind of share maybe a little bit about your story that you're comfortable with, and what do you think is important that people should know about what you've been through?
I think I think the most important thing that people have to remember, if they have a tinnitus and they can't, and they go to their doctor, it is more than likely then doctor okay, so doctor will say, don't worry, go home. And there's nothing you can do about there's nothing that you can do about the noise. But I don't agree. Because there's a lot you can do. But the problem is that sometimes tinnitus is not non medical. Sometimes tinnitus is a non-medical issue, and therefore it needs treatment and it needs a treatment in a non-medical way. And doctors don't seem to understand.
You wrote a book, The Returning Silence, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what prompted you and a little bit why you felt it was so important for you to share your story?
When I began hypnotherapy, I had no idea if I would recover, but I did. I learned so much about recovery. And I was also a PhD student. And I also learned how to research. So I knew there was nothing out there for tinnitus. for tinnitus and recovery. So I wanted to write a book. And here is a copy of that.